Hi, this is Scott Mahaffey, Executive Director of Miss Vandero's Farnsworth House, located in Plano, Illinois, and you're listening to U.S. Modernist Radio.
Mama don't allow no architecture around here. Mama don't allow no architecture around here. Oh, I don't care what Mama don't allow, gonna draw mine modern anyhow. Mama don't allow no architecture around here.
Welcome to U.S. Modernist Radio, where we talk and laugh with people who enjoy, own, create, dream about, preserve, love, and hate modernist architecture, the most exciting and controversial buildings in the world. If you're a longtime listener, you know we have a special place in our hearts for Palm Springs, California, the mecca of modernism, the home of the International Film Festival, the bedroom for concerts in Indio, and the cruising town that Sonny Bono cleaned up in the late 80s before he ran for governor. Yes, he ran for governor. It's our home away from home, but even Paris has to reinvent itself from time to time. Today's guests are looking to 2030, 2040, and beyond, and we will be welcoming them today. They are Dick Burkett, Sidney Williams, and Richard and Debra Hovel. Later on, we'll spend a few minutes with our buddy Frank Harmon. And now, your host, currently planning the 25th anniversary of U.S. Modernist Radio in 2040, Mr. Modernism, George Smart.
Hey, thanks, Tom. As most people who know me know, I am totally a long-term planner. All that consulting I used to do. If you want to schedule drinks for April 6, 2023 at 5 p.m., I am totally down for doing that right now. So please join me and Tom in 2040 when U.S. Modernist Radio has a blowout party at the Kaufman House in Palm Springs.
Oh, cool.
My future buddy Taylor Swift will own it by then. Hey, it's the future. Anything can happen. Also by then, Tom's equipment will be all nuclear-powered.
Solar powered.
Solar, okay. Our self-driving Ubers will be getting us around town, and Alan Hess will be on the Walk of Stars. Fortunately, there are some true professionals doing strategic planning for Palm Springs' architectural future, and we'll talk with them in a moment. Support for U.S. Modernist Radio comes from Wendy Robineau and Don Beskind, and by Modernist realtor Angela Roll.
The sequel to our last Episode 6, like all good space sagas, is Episode 1, The Phantom Modernists. In our continuing imaginary tale, turmoil has engulfed the Republic. Fearing the success of the modernist movement, greedy developers blockade the planet prefab, causing millions to flee as the contemporaries, which all look alike, invade with their T-111s.
Still available at Home Depot.
While Congress endlessly debates, the Home Builders Association captures Queen Hadid by luring her with a huge museum commission.
It's a trap!
But she flees to the remote planet Arcosanti. When the Queen's party goes shopping for bells in the gift shop, they befriend young Angela Roll, a feisty slave girl who designed and built an ion-powered yet carbon-neutral floating DeLorean.
Economically sustainable.
By watching old Back to the Future DVDs. The Queen enters Angela into a race, which she wins, assuring release from slavery and an internship in the Queen's Modernist Knights. But dangers lurk ahead. Centuries earlier, in 2021, you can count on Angela's great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-granddaughter.
That's a lot of greatness.
A real estate agent with specialized design training, advising buyers and sellers of modernist houses on everything from appropriate renovation to finding a DVD player in the 29th century. Angela Roll is your special real estate agent. Reach her at angelaroll.com, that's R-O-E-H-L, or 919-995-0550. And now, despite his eating all my damn Cheetos, here's your host, George Smart. You have to share with the rest of the class.
The snacks in here are just so good. Tom.
I'm going to have some more Oreos right now.
You know, folks, you just can't coast on the legacy of mid-century modernism forever. The Palm Springs Architectural Alliance is a new consortium of nationally known educators, authors, designers, artists, preservationists, architecture professionals, and fans, working with local organizations associated with preservation, design, and education. Their mission is to steward the legacy of Palm Springs architectural excellence, and it is excellent, into a new and exciting future. Our first guest is Dick Burkett. He is president of Richard Russell Design, co-founder of the Palm Springs Architectural Alliance, and he's basically served on every architecture-related board in town. Dick previously worked for Marriott, where as director of hotel room operations, he coordinated interiors for hotel renovation projects. He was also manager of the famous Art Deco Essex House in New York. Welcome, Dick.
Thank you.
Sidney Williams is an HAIA, which means she didn't have to go to architecture school to become an architect, and she grew up in modernism. Her father, John Kerner, was the last member of the Vancouver School of Painters, a group that developed modernism in Canadian art. She married modernism, as husband Eric, his son of noted architect E. Stewart Williams. She worked in modernism. From 1994 to 2016, she was the curator of architecture and design at the Palm Springs Art Museum and led the creation of a modernist bank building into the new Architecture and Design Center. She's also curated many exhibits at that building and other buildings, including exhibits on E. Stewart Williams, Donald Wexler, and John Lautner. She's also on the Palm Springs Walk of Stars, which is a really big deal. Welcome, Sidney.
Thank you.
Richard and Debra Hovel are longtime modernist fans who lived in Minnesota, where it's cold, but fell in love with modernism while vacationing in Palm Springs, where it's warm. The weather's so much better. They now own several properties around town, including Makerville, a former Elks Lodge converted to a workshop and retreat for social and professional gatherings. Welcome, Richard and Debra.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Dick, before we get started, were you manager at Essex House back when they hosted the cast and guests from Saturday Night Live?
Oh, yeah. I forgot.
No, I was maybe just a little before that.
I mean, they had ads on SNL all the time about Essex House. That's where I knew it from.
Right, like in the first few years.
Yeah.
In the 70s. But you'd already left by then for sunnier pastures?
Yes, I went from there to Florida.
Oh, okay.
To Sarasota, actually.
Ooh. You've been making the rounds.
Well, it's all about modernism. And as you know, they have quite an inventory there, too, of wonderful mid-century homes.
Sidney, all over the country, geographic areas are calling themselves a school to draw attention to their buildings, like the Sarasota School or the Carolina School. This is a bit of good branding to create an identity for mid-century modern, and you all are establishing the Palm Springs School. Tell us about that.
Well, it's very interesting that when the modern architects were practicing in Palm Springs, they were very collegial. They all did a variety of projects, commercial, residential, museums, colleges, everything. And they worked together on a number of projects, but they never were called or named themselves a school. Neither did critics at the time. It's only in later years where we have perspective that we can see that there was something created here that was very unique, just as it was in Sarasota and other communities, that really deserves to be named as a school because it did provide some very exceptional work in architecture and design that is distinctive to this environment and this community. So I think we're very happy to promote the Palm Springs School.
Now, Sidney, if it was a real school, what would be the mascot? Would it be like the Fighting Martinis, for example?
How about the swimming pool?
Yeah. I want to see a basketball game between the Sarasota School and the Palm Springs School. The cheerleaders, as well as the crowd, would all be in cocktail attire. The referee would be Paul Goldberger, and the entire thing would be in Grey Goose Arena.
You have a great imagination.
Well, we try.
That's one way to put it.
You've started drinking already, haven't you?
It's happy hour sometime. Debra and Richard, tell us about the Palm Springs Architectural Alliance. What's that all about?
Well, as usual, Dick Burkett and Richard and I were sitting around talking about our frustration of camaraderie, but friendly competition among all the various preservation and architecture organizations, nonprofits in Palm Springs. As newcomers to Palm Springs, we found that pretty confusing. We ended up joining lots of different organizations and trying to figure out who did what. And Dick had the same experience, and we were saying, wouldn't it be great if we could have like one organization without a board and without a political agenda, without anything. It was just people interested in doing good work for the community. And if all these existing organizations could work together. So that's how the whole idea started.
And how's it going? Are you able to bring all the tribes together under one tent?
Yeah, it's actually worked out extremely well. I think because we don't have a board and we don't have any real agenda other than making something happen that's great in Palm Springs, we've been able to, in our living room here, get 40 or 50 people from every organization in town together to, first of all, talk about the Alliance, and then second of all, talk about our first project, which is the College of the Desert.
Must have a big living room.
The living rooms are big in Palm Springs, yes.
It was pre-COVID, and
Well, that too.
and we're all very friendly. But it's pretty wonderful because it has grown from a couple initial exploratory cocktail hours and talks with people to something where our task force is about 9 people, but it flexes and flows depending on the projects we're working on. And there are no egos involved. There's no board of directors, so it's pretty horizontal. That makes it a lot more fun.
Dick, tell us about the new architecture school that is going in.
Well, that all came out of that first meeting it was January 2019. And what also spurred that, even before we had that conversation with Debra and Richard, I was sitting in the Annenberg Theater at a symposium that Sidney Williams had put together about 5 years ago. And there was a mention by Alan Hess, who was one of the guest speakers, about Sarasota having a school of architecture. You know, why don't we have this designation in Palm Springs? And having lived in Sarasota all those years, I realized that I'd always wondered, why don't we have this school of thought, which is really what we're talking about here, or a movement. So that conversation with Debra and Richard, fast forward, we had this meeting, and we brought all the members of the various organizations together. We had Hugh Capter there, and we had significant leaders throughout the community, and that's where it all began. And the idea started out just to be talking about the School of Architecture as a movement. And from that grew the idea, which we presented, that this is the ideal community to have a 5-year architectural degree program. So we set out to put together an initial conversation between the College of the Desert, as they were building a new campus here in Palm Springs, and Cal Poly Pomona. And never forget, Sidney and I had that initial meeting, and we've got great response from each school, and then we had to get them put together. So then we arranged that meeting, and then we had several more where all of us were together in the same room, and the sparks just kept flying. And so I'm happy to report that we're on board for that School of Architecture to be a part of the new campus. And the date is not total certain because what happened with COVID, but it's very, very much on the plate. And we'll be having more announcements about that coming quite soon. We think it's really going to draw a major international attention to the area and to the School of Architecture, but also for the local Coachella Valley students to be able to stay here. And right now, there's just a 2-year program at the College of the Desert program.
Sidney, how do you persuade Cal Poly Pomona to say, hey, come build an architecture school in the desert?
Well, it started actually several years ago because when Lauren Bricker, who is now the acting dean at Cal Poly, she and I co-curated the work of the exhibition on the work of Donald Wexler. It was called Steel and Shade, and her students helped with the construction of a model of the folded plate entrance of one of the steel houses at the exhibition, and they also created models that were in the exhibition. Then when we did the exhibition of Lino Bobardi and Albert Frey, her students again made models for that exhibition. So there's been a collaboration in the works for some time, and the Cal Poly campus has a really terrific program where the students are very much hands-on, very practical in their education and their studies. And Lauren was immediately interested, and so was the head of the architecture school there. So we've moved this project ahead, and we're very excited about it because Palm Springs really seems the ideal place to have a 5-year program.
It seems like it's just something that would be a natural fit, something long overdue.
Yes, indeed. And I think that it ties into the growth of College of the Desert now that they're building this new campus in Palm Springs on Tockwitz-McAllen, which is the main east-west road that goes to the airport, which was designed by Donald Wexler, and the City Hall designed by Albert Frey and John Clark and the Willams. And so it's right there in an architectural community and very accessible to transportation. And I think Debra and Richard should talk about this, about the collaboration with COD and their design for the campus, which is coming up.
So Debra and Richard, tell us about COD and the design for the campus that's coming up.
Well, the really great part is that when we were all talking about this and we realized there was going to be this, I think we all first, at least we kind of saw the lot being scraped and we're trying to figure out, it was an old shopping center that couldn't be repurposed. And so it was torn down. But when we realized what it was going to be, and then we got the bee in our bonnet about an architecture school, we said, well, shouldn't that building be something fantastic? And what are they going to do? And what is it going to look like? And does anybody know? And nobody really did. And we were able to work our way in with the COD, and they decided that we sounded like an official organization, so they would listen to us. And I think part of it is we also got them in the same room with 50 people in our living room with everybody else in town. And it's quite an impressive roster. A lot of people come to Palm Springs from some pretty amazing jobs and doing some fairly amazing things. And when you start going around the room and talking to them, and I think realizing that all these people, we weren't here to get a consultant's fee. We are all just lovers of Palm Springs, and we're very concerned that this building be something great. And by great, what we really mean is something that is in the spirit of the legacy, not just a butterfly roof thrown on every building, which is the go-to mid-century cue that every mediocre developer uses. And
I think even your KFC has a butterfly roof, right?
Yes, it does indeed. There's a KFC bucket. It's the butterfly wings. That's a whole special. Anyway, we've actually been able to sit in, consult with the architects that they're looking at. We're going to be part of the review board. We've provided a little education for the people that have been competing. Alan Hess actually gave them an hour and a half overview of what Palm Springs actually is all about. And I think they all were quite interested and engaged in the conversation. So what we really hope is, because we see it's right in the middle of our community, and we really want to fold them into with things like Modernism Week, who we had in the living room here with us, talking about, well, how could the folks at Modernism Week use that campus? How could the film festival use that campus? How could we cooperate? And how could we make that thing something spectacular? And I hate to say the Bilbao effect because that sets the bar awfully high, but why not?
Well, sure. So are they farming it out to internationally known architects at this point?
Well, they went through because it's California state government bond money that they're spending. The project is being managed in a rather unusual way, but they have a master plan, and our task force was part of the group choosing the best architectural firms to do that, and a landscape designer as well. And then they went through another round. They had 50 RFQs submitted for designing the actual buildings on that campus. And they whittled that down to 6 and then 3. And again, we were involved in that, and we will be announcing the winner of that competition.
Is Bjarke Ingels involved on this list at all, I hope?
Oh. I always have it at the ready.
Any
It's
clues?
very wise of you as a recording pro.
Any clues? Bjarke Ingels, he on the list?
We've been sworn to secrecy. We can't give any more clues than that. But let's just say they were 3 very well-known firms who are U.S.-based but have worked internationally.
Okay. All right. Well, we're going to cross our fingers on that.
As are we.
Sidney, you are a member of a very exclusive club The other two members are Elizabeth Armstrong and Janice Lyle, and that you've all lived in the Frey House too. Is that right?
Oh, no, I have not lived in Frey House too. I've unfortunately not had that opportunity.
Oh, we got some bad intel. We had heard that you had lived up there for a while.
I wish that were true.
Oh, okay.
Well, it's true that Liz and Janice did live there.
Yes.
And Janice there for a couple of years. Her stay was shorter than that, but they both had an extreme appreciation of the design as a result of that experience.
Yes, I'm looking to be hired as director of the museum any day, just so I can go and live there for, a few months. When the next opening comes up, please let me know.
Yeah, you'll be on the list.
Dick, you guys are working on a new book with Alan Hess, who I consider the Obi-Wan Kenobi of mid-century modernism. What's that book going to be about?
That would be a great subject for Deborah to talk about.
Deborah.
Okay, so Dick mentioned that early on he had this idea that he brought up, I think, over tea one afternoon about the idea of a Palm Springs school. And Richard and I thrilled to that idea. We own, I think, all the books that have been written by local people and international people on modernism around the world and the U.S. and certainly Palm Springs. It caused us to move here. But we were realizing that there was not a book that described exactly the thoughts behind the movement. And Dick persuaded us that actually that was a necessary book to be written. And so we contacted Alan Hess, who signed on amidst his many other projects and has been a great supporter of the PSAA. And we are just at the point now where we have firmed up the contents of that book, all of the architects' new and old photography that will be included, as well as developers and builders who were key to the Coachella Valley, as well as landscape architects whose work has more recently, I think, come to be seen as an important component of modernism in the Coachella Valley. So we firmed that up, and now we're going to turn it over to Richard, and he and I are going to make a very jazzy, sexy pitch document for donors and also publishers, and then we'll proceed from there. But Alan has written a couple of excellent sample chapters as well as a list, a table of contents, and it is going to be a hefty tome that will answer the question definitively that there was definitely a recognizable movement in this area that can be defined as primarily about new technology and response to nature here. And it's going to be a very exciting book. It can also be used as a textbook for our new COD architecture program.
One of the things that Alan has talked about in defining the Palm Springs School is the architecture of leisure, which I think is a very interesting. This whole town was basically developed as a resort community, and so much of the spirit and the light and all of it really does kind of come down to this sense of why people are so happy out here, this sense of come out to Palm Springs and, put on your bathing suit, grab a cocktail, and enjoy the architecture.
That sounds great. Why are we working so hard?
I don't know.
Yeah, really. You're not with the program here.
Takes a lot of work to relax.
No, I am with the program. Deborah's the one writing the program. That's why I'm working so hard. That's why all of us are working so hard.
So, Dick, I have a question for you.
Okay.
There's an expression from the 1990s. She's just not that into you. The town of Palm Springs, despite generating huge economic development off of its mid-century architecture, doesn't seem to be too much into it, either now or in the past. What's that all about? That's
come a long way. We've been working very closely with the city of Palm Springs over this last year. And it's a part of what really needs to happen is education, which is what we've been doing with our council and with our planning commission, our architectural advisory committee. And I think that there's a different attitude that is present today than maybe there has been in the past. But we've brought in, George, each of the council members to be a part of these programs and to be a part of a presentation. And, there's nothing like when you get people involved with the process, their interest blossoms a great deal. And I think that's what's happened here. So our whole idea for Fast Forward in designing Palm Springs is that there is going to be attention given to what is being built today. What was built in the last few years kind of can be maybe a hiccup. And so the goal of this conference is to create design guidelines. And we've already got the blessing from the city council members on that, doing that. And that will go into process sometime in the first quarter of 2021. And the idea is to be able to create a checklist for architects and developers so that it's at the very beginning of their project, before they start really inking things out, that they will go through this list that's going to be created by this task force of people from the Advisory Commission and from the Planning Commission, and also members of the community that we, as our task force, are going to be recommending to make it actually a part of the ordinance. And so this is a perfect time to be doing this. And what we're concerned about and committed with the Palm Springs Architectural Alliance is, what will Palm Springs be celebrating 40, 50 years from now? And that we also retain our international status as being a real architectural mecca, because I think people expect more out of a city like Palm Springs as we have this rich legacy.
So it sounds like the city is coming around. Richard and Debra, what about the Native American tribe that owns much of downtown? Are they into modernism at all?
I would say no. And, you know, the hard part is that in the past, there was the Spa Casino that was on the corner of Tockwitz. That was a beautiful Wexler. Sydney, is that Wexler?
Yes.
Cody? Or is that?
The spa bathhouse
Wexler
was designed by Wexler and Harrison, yes.
So it was really an iconic piece of architecture that was on Indian land, and there were negotiations going on for trying to save it. And then one morning we woke up and the building had been torn down. And so that created a lot of ill will. But I think that we all realize that the tribe is part of the town, and we want to try to fold them into and make it part of. And I think we're trying to be as inclusive as possible. And it's an educational process. I think there are many of us in Palm Springs who came here because of the modern architecture. But I think it's also, once you move here, you realize that, oh, there are a lot of people. So Modernism Week has, you know, hundreds of thousands of people that show up for it. And then you realize, you talk to somebody in the grocery store who's lived here for 40 years and they don't know what mid-century modern architecture is. So it's part of our job, what Dick was talking about, with educating. And I think that that's why we're so fascinated by the campus that's going up, this new campus right in the middle of the community, that if we can make that a spectacular piece of architecture that attracts not just out-of-towners, but everybody in town, and becomes sort of a hub and a locus of activity, I think that could be great. So there, you know, it's a multi-pronged effort, and we've all drunk the Kool-Aid, but we're kind of, you know, we're the nerds in the group.
Yeah. The other thing is that the tribe was here long before we arrived. So
true.
You know, we really would like them to revere the same white architects' buildings that we do, and they don't. And for obvious reasons, that's true. They don't have the same reference for mid-century modern or any other architecture, just like we didn't have any reverence for their architecture that was here when the first settlers came to Palm Springs. So it's kind of one of those checkerboard reservation situations, which is highly unusual. And so they're integral to Palm Springs as we are in their Palm Springs. And we're, I think, really focused on education and rolling everybody in together. And if anything has come out of 2020, it's greater tolerance and greater understanding and greater respect for minorities or pre-existing culture.
Yes, I would hope that the tribe is part of these discussion groups that you have going.
We have tried at every turn to include them, and with some success, and we hope growing success.
Good.
We're not giving up.
Sidney, I have a question for you. Is the wonderful Kerner house designed by E. Stewart Williams also connected to your branch of that family?
Yes, the client was my great uncle Leon.
Okay.
He was my father's uncle, yes.
Your father's uncle.
Yep. So my great uncle. And the first time I visited that house, I was 12 years old. I came here on Easter vacation with my parents from Vancouver, BC, which is where my great uncle's permanent residence was. But he had employed Stu and Garrett Ekbo and Arthur Elrod to design and do the interiors and the landscaping for this house in Palm Springs, which was just recently restored by a couple from Boston.
Now, did you meet your husband when he was a child at that same time period?
No, that wasn't until he was in medical school and I was in college. And I had not met him before then. I had met his parents, but when I was here as a 12-year-old, he was already a freshman in college. Our paths didn't cross at that time.
I could see this being part of the movie version, you know, with different passing of the tie and the tie-in to the uncle and all of that. So,
yeah, it's pretty much an arranged marriage, I guess you could say.
That's not the story I've heard where he came in and swept you off your feet.
Well,
at age 12, you were probably easy to pick up, too. I mean, lightweight.
Yes.
That's all I meant.
Right.
Thank you. Thank you.
Now, do you have to live in Palm Springs to be part of the Architectural Alliance? Are there things people can do that don't live there?
Absolutely.
I don't think we've ever been asked that question before, but there certainly are, aren't there, Dick?
Absolutely. Yes. And we've actually had, some input as we are growing here from people from out of town who are extremely aware and interested in what we are doing. And I think we're going to see more and more of that as well, because the word is spreading, out across the country.
Yeah, our 5 listeners are going to probably be really interested in this.
Well, the one thing that we haven't talked about is because Modernism Week was all virtual this year, and we've all gotten so adept at accessing online learning and activities in a way we never did before. Our Fast Forward conference was online, and it will be very soon, a link to it will be posted on our Architectural Alliance website, and it can be accessed by anyone. The 5 million listeners to this podcast.
Oh, we've gone to 5 million now. Okay, great.
I thought that's what you were implying earlier.
Yes.
But anyway, so we're going to post a lot of things to that website that will be free to anyone who's interested. And we're working on really fascinating second edition of that, which will be live during Modernism Week in February, a live virtual recording, that is. And we're including many architects from all over the U.S. because we have access to them because they're all at home working. So we have widely varied and fascinating topics which will be covered in Fast Forward 2, Designing the Future of Palm Springs.
Oh, awesome. Awesome. And the website is psarchitecturalalliance.org. Is that right?
That's correct. I just sent that to you, a link to our mission video as well.
Yes, I see it there in the inbox, hovering about.
Well, I will just warn you, it's 6.5 hours of content, which you can breeze through to things that are less local and more universal in interest. And we've pared it down to 3.5 or 4 hours. And we're at work on Fast Forward 3 as we speak.
Sounds like a Netflix binge.
It is.
It is really interesting.
Sidney, Dick, Debra, Richard, thank you so much for being with us. It's really been a pleasure to learn about the future of Palm Springs.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
And now a few minutes with Frank Harmon, reading from his book, Native Places.
The Orb Weaver. I'll begin with a quotation by the poet Stanley Kunitz. One of the great satisfactions of the human spirit is to feel that one's family extends across the borders of species. I've been living a quiet life recently during the pandemic. Almost no one's coming to the house. When visitors do call, we sit outside under the live oak trees. Then the spider came. She was an orb weaver. She spun a web across my balcony door, and when I opened the door, as I do every morning, she scurried to the center of her web. She was here for most of September. I'd started thinking of her as a roommate. My friend Alice brings me eggs laid by her chickens, Trevor, Sweetie, and Mama Boots. I know each chicken by the color of her egg. Sweetie's are pale blue. Mama Boots, reddish brown. Recently, my spider roommate left. Maybe she's relocated for more food, Alice said. Then yesterday, I noticed a new web in the redbud tree a few feet from my balcony. It was nice to see an old friend, and it's good to have eggs from named chickens.
Thanks for listening. U.S. Modernist Radio is underwritten by Wendy Robineau and Don Beskind, and by Angela Roll, your special real estate agent for Modernist houses. Okay, Tom, take us out.
Visit usmodernist.org's massive archives to listen to our past shows, discover documentation of 8,000 significant Modernist houses, and access 3 million pages of classic 20th century architecture magazines. U.S. Modernist Radio is produced by Soundtracks Recording Studios in Raleigh, North Carolina. Our theme song is performed by George Smart and Robinson Earl. Carrie Cesarino researches guests while juggling 6 children and... Oh, I'm sorry, that was 6 chickens and 2 children. Hard to keep them straight. All roaming in her backyard, plus a shockingly handsome husband and a pitcher of martinis.
Wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
U.S. Modernist Radio is a production of Modernist Archive Incorporated, a nonprofit educational archive for the documentation, preservation, and promotion of modernist residential design. I'm Tom Gild. George and I'll be back soon with another sunny, warm, new school, new thought edition of U.S. Modernist Radio.